This is the realest show out.
You did the opposite of what I think most people do. Sometimes it can be kind of scary to just put yourself out there.
That's real. That's raw. That's exactly what we're looking for. We look forward to connecting with you guys on all of our social media platforms. The way to support us is to like and comment on all your favorite episodes. And please don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications for the next Gut Check Uncut. What's up, guys? Todd Special, your co-host of Gut Check. I got B-Bisc in the house. Feeling a little under the weather today, aren't you?
I actually feel great compared to 2 days ago.
You don't look great, though. It's not
I have like a cool Todd Special rasp in my voice now. So.
Well, this next guest is a very, very dear friend of mine. We hit it off instantly. We met in LA and just a relationship spawned from there. This guy is Paul Blanchard. Paul's an elite level coach and speaker. He's also known as a pattern disruptor and uses tools and principles honed and built from the study of over 200,000 entrepreneurial and business leaders' minds to improve people in the processes. He's the president and co-founder of Habit Finder. He's does a lot of habit dynamics. He's also the expert in that field. He's the president of Ogmandino Leadership Institute, speaker, corporate trainer, business leader, and a coach personally and for businesses, of course. Assisted former CEO of GE in building a top 25 executive MBA program. He works with his father in helping to carry out Ogmandino's principles from the greatest salesman in the world. And he's a husband and a father of 3 girls like me, and he's truly a huge family man. Let's welcome Mr. Paul Blanchard. What's up, brother?
What's going on, man?
It's good to be here. I'm excited.
Awesome. I felt like that Liz could go on and on, but I'd be here all day with your accomplishments, dude. But, you know, I want you to tell a little bit about, tell the world about who you are. If they don't know who you are, it's probably crazy because they should, but you're literally probably one of the smartest dudes I've ever met in my life. But usually, and I'm just going to say this because I don't have an IQ level as near as yours, but usually when you meet a guy of your intelligence, that they're not as cool as you. How are you so cool and so smart at the same time, bro?
I've met people with really high IQs. One of our good friends, Lee Steinberg, who's the best sports agent of all time. They did Jerry Maguire after him. I mean, he's got like 180 IQ. He's ridiculously intelligent. My smartest move ever was to completely infiltrate my life with some counsel from a mentor of mine, Wyatt Woodsmall, who said, you could be wrong and you probably are. And that's where I start with everything, not from a defeatist or a cynical standpoint, but from a curiosity standpoint. If you're willing to start with that your reality is not the reality, I guess apparently it makes you sound pretty smart going through life in a lot of different ways and learning a lot of tough lessons, but realizing that after about 6 years old, you've developed about 95% of your brain. So the most important skill you can learn after that is to unlearn, not to learn. And so I guess that's contributed to a perception of being smart, but more willing to notice things that other people might not notice. So I think that's more what I do than anything. I'm pretty good at Trivial Pursuit kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're pretty smart, Paul. I remember we were on stage. We spoke at an event together in Naples, and I remember Paul gets on stage, and he's talking, and everybody loves what he's saying. And then about 15 minutes through, he's just like, he says, "I'm not going to go in and use any like massively huge words because I want everybody to kind of understand in layman's terms kind of what I'm talking about." And I was like, "Dude, I didn't understand the first fucking 15 minutes of what you just said." I took bits like you used big enough words in the first 15 minutes that I didn't know. I remember looking at Danelle Delgado and I said, Danelle, what does that mean? Like, and today says I haven't used big words with. So that listen, you're an awesome guy, but I definitely want people to know who you are. So tell us about Habit Finder, what you do, how'd you get into speaking? How'd you get into coaching? I mean, I just want the world to know, Paul.
Gotcha. So I'm probably someone that eclectic people would call pretty eclectic. I'm awkward and strange and all over the place. My music playlist probably sums up the nature of my life. It would jump from Yanni to Megadeth to Skrillex to Tupac, everything except for country. I'm not a big country guy, but that's kind of how I've always lived. Probably the most important thing for people to remember about me is I'm incredibly insecure. And I consider it to be my greatest superpower. Probably the biggest misunderstanding I get is Paul loves to tell people like it is. I don't enjoy it at all. It's why I feel like I'm supposed to do it, because there's a lot of people out there who love to tell people like it is. They get off on it. They think it's, oh yeah, I'm really giving them the truth. But the fact of the matter is they're not telling it like it is. They're telling it like it is for them. And that's not a bad thing. But if you tell it in such a forceful way, in such a proud, driven way, it's only expected that the person receiving it is going to assume that needs to be their reality. That needs to be their truth. So I find insecurity to be a tremendous assistant to me, a superpower in what I do. I spent a lot of my teenage years trying to figure out who I was, which really meant I spent most of those years trying to figure out how to be popular, how to be accepted by other people. And I'm really glad I played that game for as long as I did, because I think it's pretty hard to calibrate yourself if you haven't felt that side of the world, that side of civilization. Theater saved my life. I got into theater as a teenager when depression was really heavy. And when you're a big thinker and creative, I mean, all the gifts open you up to a whole bunch of shadow sides. And I found an incredible calibration and development of discipline and fun and creativity and soul searching work in theater that led to a theater scholarship in college, which led to quitting college. I was in a humanities class, which is funny. I just heard Jordan Peterson in an interview say never take humanities at college. Like it's the most worthless class you can take. I would put sociology next to that too. No offense. One of my coaches is a very accomplished sociology professor, and we have good conversations around that. But then I became an entrepreneur, one of 7 kids. My dad started this company in 2000 as I was kind of getting close to launching my entrepreneurial career. And so I leaned on him. What do I need to know? Like, what's this experience like? What's this life like? How do you win? How do you pull this off? And he handed me this. He handed me the greatest salesman in the world, Augmendino, which was the keystone for his company that he started, that originally started as the Augmendino Group and now operates today as Habit Finder. And I was hooked. I wanted to be my own boss. So I quit school. I quit my job. I blasted Bon Jovi, It's My Life, as I put my work in my rearview mirror and drove off. And then made a sequence of incredibly stupid, lucky, wonderful, terrible decisions, which, is kind of the nature of the beast. 2008 happened to everybody, obviously. I think I was exceptionally talented in putting myself in a terrible position for it. And everything fell apart. Then it came time to figure out, okay, cool. Well, now that life has totally died, which one do I want to birth next? What do I want to rebuild? What do I want to keep? What do I want to get rid of? And I went back to school, not for an education. I have an allergy to people that overvalue credentials, but for discipline. I started something and I didn't finish it, and open loops will kill a man. And so I went back to finish it. And that led to working for the university that I went back to school for. And then they acquired a MBA program, or the infancy of an MBA program. It just happened to be created by Jack Welch, who, in my humble opinion, not so humble opinion, is the greatest American CEO in the history of the world. And we created a top 25 MBA program, all the things. It was incredible. Lots of pinch me moments, hanging out in his penthouse in Central Park and in uptown Manhattan, across the hall from Beyonce and Jay-Z. I mean, it was all the things. And then I just realized I had done what I needed to do. And I called up my dad. We're just checking in, seeing what's up. How's life? And I mentioned, hey, I'm moving on, looking for the next opportunity. And he said, that's interesting, because I need a partner that I can trust. I was like, cool, good luck with that. That'll probably be tough. And he said, no, I want you. I was like, I said no. And he campaigned for about 6 weeks, and then literally had our attorneys draft what working with him, not for him, really meant. And so I accepted that position almost exactly 7 years ago. And all the speaking, coaching, counseling, all the stuff I had been doing for over 15 years just came to a head with a very intentional position, and it kind of all came together. And we've built Habit Finder. We've honed our assessment to just a next level. There isn't anything else out there that's as relevant to transformation, that's as relevant to growth. As you know, we call it the unpersonality test. I'm sure we'll get into that when we get a chance. But yeah, I'm a big dude. You can't
tell everybody how big you are, because you can't tell. It's widescreen on the laptop, but
or if you're listening on a podcast. So I'm about 6'5" and 325 pounds. Got a 38-inch waist, and I used to be a competitive power lifter. So I'm a large man, and that has a tendency. And with my vocalization from theater, I can come across more intense than I feel on the inside. And so that's something that I work on constantly. Interestingly, most of my clients are women, and most by 65 to 35 split, kind of thing. But yeah, I really bank on what I mentioned from Wyatt Woodsmall, and I bank on the fact that I don't want to be an expert. An expert, and I don't have anything against experts. They should be listened to carefully, like thoughtfully, but with caution, because an expert is going to tell you how they did it. And unless it's a technical expert, they're teaching you how to use Excel, or they're teaching you how to program a website or something. Unless it's a technical expert, you want to make sure you are very biased to, as they would say, eating the fish and spitting out the bones, which is an interesting recommendation, because oftentimes when you're listening to experts, it's actually the bones that you want to pay attention to and use. There's way more meat, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to digest it. You're going to be able to integrate it. So I try to be really careful about making sure that I come across powerfully enough that people will listen, but scattered enough that they're going to come away thinking more about what they thought about it rather than what they need to adopt that I exactly said.
Yeah, that's pretty
sense?
cool. Yeah, no, it does. And it's funny because, you're a very articulate guy. And when you speak, I love listening. Like, I'll be honest, first time I listened to you in LA, you were on stage and I was looking, and you are a big dude. And I was like, man, this guy, and you have a very strong presence and a strong voice. You're also an extraordinary speaker, but you speak in a way that you want your message to just come across. You want people to understand what you're saying. You want them to get value out of it. And you have a passion for that. I mean, how did that drive you in the growth of this company? Because you look, a lot of people, Paul, let's be honest, they're in business to make money. Yes, you can help more people with money than you can. I get it. You have a natural ability to make people feel comfortable in your presence. I remember the first time I shook your hand, I was like, holy shit. Because I'm looking up, like I'm 5'9", so I'm looking up, but you were just great. And you're always so complimentary about the people that are around you that are doing good things. You constantly make people feel very good in your presence. How does that help a company scale? Because I know it's intentional, but it's also from the heart with you. So how does that help your company? How did it help your company scale? And what advice can you give other people that are trying to grow their company and kind of implement the same things?
So there's a question that is not being asked enough, is what I would say right up front. Companies, human beings, the world is not asking this question enough. At what cost? It should not be asked cynically. It should not be asked rhetorically. It should not be asked to create a disease that isn't there. It should be asked with tremendous compassion. It should be asked with tremendous patience, and it should be asked with tremendous curiosity. But at what cost? We'd like to believe that we're these enlightened creatures that have evolved so far beyond our animal counterparts, which is so ignorant. The strongest part of the brain that's tied into our nervous system is still very driven by animal instinct. See it, want it, get it. I mean, that's always working. That part of us never sleeps. And it also has endless stamina. So that's not necessarily a fair fight if we're going in assuming that we're more irrational than we actually are. Okay. If we're going in assuming that what I believe about myself is totally true, that what I believe about that person is totally true. and justification, rationalization, all this stuff that robs us of being able to have this constantly calibrating, disrupting, conflicting, hypocritical experience that is life and being human. And so as we get the opportunity to consider, okay, I want to scale my business. Well, there are plenty of opportunities for you to go and get the tactics to do so. But tactics are a dangerous beast. Strategy is a dangerous beast because it naturally dislocates us from vision. Vision and strategy are not the same thing. Vision and tactics are not the same thing. Perfect example. Fast food thrives today because of our animal instincts for convenience, inexpensive, and yummy. But we lost the vision of what it does to our bodies, what it does to our kids long term. I'm not here to take a stand against fast food as evil. I mean, in nutrition, they say a cheat meal is better than no meal. So like if you're out on the road and you don't have another option, like, hey, that's not terrible. But it was, okay, a hamburger today with a cheeseburger today is not bad, but a couple of times a week for the next 5 years is certainly going to make a big impact. And you've got all these people thinking about their lives in these short-term pockets, and they come into it and they create a different set of rules in every season of their life, in every pocket that they're in, without connecting the dots of at what cost. I mean, show me someone who's killing it today, and we dive into what's going on under the surface. We're always going to find things that are creating collateral damage, always. And I'm not here to say that that's a bad thing. There's always collateral damage in the pursuit of growth. There's always collateral damage in the pursuit of success. I mentioned Jordan Peterson. He's one of my favorites, said that the toughest thing about growth and truth is to learn new truth. Old truth has to die. And that's a painful thing to experience. And so are we willing to look at the collateral damage patiently, compassionately, and curiously? Because what gets you a great Q1 isn't necessarily what gets you a great year. What gets you a great year isn't what gets you a great life in terms of tactics and strategies. In terms of vision, in terms of the long-term consideration, which is probably why Peter Drucker says you should live your life in 90 days and 20 years. Those should be your two biggest anchors. What am I going to do in the next 90 days to win? And how clear am I about the next 20 years to make sure that those 90 days don't create unnecessary collateral damage just for a win? So that's what I would say. If you're going to scale, then I would listen to what everybody else says about scaling and challenge the opposite and experiment with the opposite. The mentors of Airbnb, I believe it was, billionaire mentor for them, said, do what doesn't scale so that you can. Because in the world today of technological advance, of access at lightning speed to people and resources and answers, we want to believe that that's somehow circumvented and shortcutted the human existence. You know, Frank Baum taught us the greatest lesson for growth and success and scaling in his masterpiece in The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy shows up to Munchkinland, and Glinda could have very easily said, hey, click your heels, say there's no place like home, and it's over. And she would have robbed her of her yellow brick road. And there was no other experience she could have had, no other mentorship she could have had that could have replaced having trees throw apples at her and meeting some idiot who turned out to be the most trusted, loyal friend ever, and meeting some cold, metallic seeming person that actually had more heart than anyone she'd ever known, and meeting some narcissistic jerk that turned out just to be afraid, and then taking on all these other challenges. I mean, you name it, you go through the list and the parallels, the symbolism to our lives. If a company wants to scale, if a person wants to scale, do it by being more conscious and intentional about your yellow brick road. Don't do it by trying to shortcut it. Now, you can certainly make it take longer. Victimhood, trying to avoid escape life can certainly make that yellow brick road take a lot longer. But the best thing that I see in companies that are incredible are the ones who aren't trying to be incredible this year. They want to be incredible forever. And you need wins along the way for that to matter. But part of that is going to be redefining a win. Like at some point, the third leg of winning got got amputated from the world. To win means to struggle, to conquer, and acquire. And you guys see it every day. We've got a world full of salespeople and entrepreneurs and business leaders struggling, conquer, struggling, conquering, struggling, conquering, struggling, conquering, struggling, conquering. They don't know how to acquire. Because one of the main staples of acquiring is to celebrate, which means to publish. And our reptilian brain is terrified to celebrate because that means we're going to settle and we're going to get comfortable. Well, on the other side of settling and comfortable is embracing and habits and creating those things that can actually sustain us. So rambling a bit, but I would come back to, if you're going to scale, if you're going to grow, ask at what cost, curiously, compassionately, and patiently every step of the way.
Yeah.
Lao Tzu said that nature is never in a hurry and yet all is accomplished. How cool is that?
Pretty amazing, dude. You know, that kind of ties into what Habit Finder is, right? Like your job is to kind of, you offer these free tests, which I want you to talk about now. I took one of these things with you a while back, a little over 6 months ago, and we had a conversation, and it was crazy how on point this test was. And I'm not just saying that because I'm as skeptical as it can possibly be. Like, I don't have that, you know, and I'm not, that's not my deal. It wasn't, it is now. Okay. So when you look at like predictive indexing, you look at like people that take these tests, you know, when I took this test, you literally, you shut me up in a matter of 30 minutes in conversation with just a simple test that I took. Right. I want you to talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think you did say at the beginning that my test came back perfect, right? It was like nothing wrong.
Classic.
Oh, there's a good, quick laugh out of that.
That's
For those of you
in
listening,
the test.
it's
probably
in the test.
saying,
So Todd thinks
this
he's
guy,
perfect.
yeah.
So, at a very high level. But no, there were some really cool things. You said one thing that still sits with me, Paul. You said you've lived your life, and this is before you really knew. You said you've lived your entire life with your back against the wall. And you said, imagine if you relieve that pressure, what you could do. And I've literally thought about that. Those two sentences for like, it was well over 6 months ago when we had this conversation. Every day it's in my head because every day you're right. That tension, I feel like, man, I have to move forward, right? I feel like the wall is just pushing me, right? And you kept saying that separation, that gap is going to make you more powerful than you've ever imagined. And it's really stuck with me on a friendship level. You know, you kind of gave me some insight because I trusted you. Tell the world what Habit Finder is. Brandon just took his exam before this. And we're looking at some similarities, but there's so much depth into what Habit Finder is and why it's important. Most of the people that we've spoken to have said that predictive indexing is something they will never live without. It is something that they're going to look, and I'm not sure if that's exactly what this is, Paul, so, correct me if I'm wrong there, but they said that they make sure that they put everybody through some sort of testing to find out who they are as people before they implement them into positions where they can thrive. Tell us a little about Habit Finder and how it can help people.
Sure. And I'm glad you gave me permission to be raw and aggressive because I can get a little aggressive in this space.
I love that. Let's go.
Super important disclaimer. When I get aggressive towards something, it's usually not the thing. It's what it does to the brain. Because there's what we mean about something. There's what we mean about hustle. There's what we mean about financial freedom. There's what we mean about these things. But then there's what it actually does to our brains. And I spend all day, every day in the downstairs brain with people. That's what the Habit Finder measures, which is very counterintuitive, very not quite what, push to pull, left to go right, all those kinds of things in terms of how we grow and how we create what we do. And so let's talk about personality tests, which is primarily based in an inductive science, which is predictive indexing is a main part of that. There's actually a predictive index assessment, but most of the other assessments use predictive indexing, from DISC to Myers-Briggs to the color code and everything else. What their goal is to induce a diagnosis based on your subjective interpretation of the questions. And the diagnosis itself is therefore subjective. And I think that they're a phenomenal orientation. Like you sign up for college and you go to an orientation, you start working at a job, you go to orientation. Because if you think about it geographically, you think about it navigationally, being oriented is very important. You can have the best directions in the world, but if they don't start with where you're currently at, then that's tough because to know what the next step is, which is why when we get stuck in the trap of I don't know what to do next, all that is the brain saying, I don't want to start where we are. And so it deploys confusion, complication, frustration, overwhelm, all in an effort to try and get you to go, oh, we don't know where to start. We don't know what to do next. You do. And there are very simple exercises you can do to identify that in a matter of minutes, but it's just the brain saying, I don't want to start where we are. So orientation is super important. And so I think a personality test is a phenomenal introduction to your current emotional preference, because that's all a personality is. The colors, the animals, the letters, all of it. It's a profile of your the emotions you're currently biased to, or as Joe Dispenza says, the emotions you've memorized. You have access to any personality type. You have access to any preference if you want to work on it long enough. But here's the great risk. And here is my frustration as a pattern disruptor, as a brain coach, is that as soon as we assign a label, we're done. I am whatever. Like, you just created your own box. Congratulations. Now, if you're looking in the box to be curious, and then you're going to look outside of the box to experiment and grow and drive, that's not a bad orientation. But the number of times I've had to literally stop calls, 50 people in a group we're going through who said half a dozen times, I'm a 7 or I'm a 3 or because I'm this or because I'm that. It's not helping. It's helping explain why you are the way that you are. But why are we in personal growth if we're looking to just stay the way that we are? Oh, this is so much better. Everyone said I'm an asshole. I'm not an asshole. I'm a high D. Or I'm a red or whatever. Like, okay, congratulations. Now you feel justified in being an asshole. That's going to help. So again, it's not aggression towards the Enneagram or the DISC or anything else. I think they're phenomenal tools, but you got to understand what you're working with. You're working with an induced diagnosis to orient where you're currently at. As soon as you're oriented, it's time to travel. It's time to transport. It's time to move. It's not time to sit there and memorize the cactus over here and the plant over here and the mound of dirt over here. It's time to start traveling, start going. And it's very difficult to do the more we feel this warm, fuzzy blanket of our current orientation. Because growth doesn't come from that. Growth comes from disruption. Growth comes from challenging and experimenting and all of those different things and unlearning. So again, I'm all for someone starting there, but it's very limited in transformation. So insert the habit finder, because we searched. We were desperate to be able to measure mindset. Okay, it was 18 years ago. We had created all these great programs. They were so great that we had sold about $57,000 in 2 years, which is not enough to sustain a company. But Og said something that we couldn't get out of our heads in scroll 1. He said, the other mind, and granted, he wrote this in 1967, the other mind that never sleeps and makes us act in ways we do not comprehend. That was the basis of all 10 scrolls, was how can we reach that other mind? How can we reach the part of us that is irrational, the part of us that has more influence and more stamina in our lives than our thinker brain, our conscious selves actually does? We couldn't find that in personality tests. We couldn't find that in aptitude or behavioral tests. We found it in being able to measure thinking patterns. All your brain is a set of neurological patterns, and it just looks for whatever it can fit into different patterns. And in order to be able to have your reality show up differently on a consistent basis, in order for the ultimate goal of personal growth, in order to occur to yourself differently, we will want to understand those patterns and understand the governing laws and guidelines for shifting those patterns. And it doesn't just come from tactics and strategies. It comes from tactics and strategies that understand those laws and guidelines. Because if you violate them, can you still get results? Of course. That's why people love to pour most of their time and energy into behavior. I'm doing something that's hurting me. If I stop doing it, it stops hurting me. But then I don't understand why I started doing it again. If I start doing something, it helps me. So I started doing it, it helped me, but I don't understand why I couldn't keep doing it. So those are the kinds of questions we wanted to be able to answer. We wanted to find what's under the surface, what's at the source of our existence. And it's our brain. It's how our brain processes our life internally and externally. And we were lucky enough to find the science and the math to be able to do that objectively. It is an objective assessment. It's the only assessment I know of that is EEOC certified. Equal Employment Opportunity Coalition, one of the most stringent regulatory committees and organizations in the world, said that our assessment, the tools that we use, the foundation of our assessment, transcends race, gender, and religion. That you can come from any different background as long as English is your primary language, because that's the one that we created it in. That it's going to give us a totally objective read on how you think. Now, both of you took it. It's annoying and it's weird because you have no idea what we're looking for.
Yeah.
We're not saying if you were in this situation and this person did this to you, how would you react? Somewhat agree, mostly disagree. I mean, how can you not project who you wish you were on a test like that? How can you not project who you think you are, which who you think you are is not necessarily who you are. The Habit Finder shows where who you think you are is in alignment with who you are and where it's not in alignment with who you are. And the simple equation of you've got goals and dreams, you've got how you think. And if you're not acquiring them, your thinking is not in alignment with them. But if we can get in alignment with them, you'll acquire them. And then those goals and dreams change and the alignment will need to change. It's like baseball. You don't just get up there and do the same swing every time. It depends on the pitcher and the play and the scenario and the situation. There's so many variables. And we were shocked that we actually found a way to measure about 6 quadrillion of them. And it's what allows us to have conversations, not of accusation. You know, there's a slight nuance to what you remembered about what I told you. What I said, which I love that you took ownership of it, because that's the idea. But I can't make you take ownership. I said, your thought processes are at risk of, and then I said what you said. I didn't say you are doing this, because I can't see that in the Habit Finder. I can just see the patterns that have these risks associated and these benefits associated. And then you and I explored together how you might be experiencing those based on the most common way that they play out. You know, like there's an interesting dynamic here, and you've come a long way, Todd, even from the last time I remember going through your assessment. But like you've come from a world of pain. You've come from a world of you power through, you break through, you make it happen. And then you get the fruits of the spoils and the rewards after the fact. Interestingly enough, on the other side of the equation here, in terms of just looking at your two assessments, Brandon, you got thinking patterns, and I'm curious about this, okay? And I could be way off right here live on this show, but you got thinking patterns that would lead me to believe you get irritated by people who try to inflict pain on you for motivation, who try to get you to feel like there's your FOMO and try to get you to feel like, you know, it's got to be this struggle and this battle, and it's just got to be terrible and hard because it'll be worth it later. Why? Because you got some thinking patterns that are so clear in how your life shows up, how you process it, enjoy, that you just got a very natural, productive perspective on life. I wouldn't be surprised if when people come in who need to, you know, throw the fire and brimstone and the FOMO and all that kind of stuff, that it falls flat on you. Is that something you experience?
That's pretty crazy that you said that. So you're a 1,000,000% right, which is one of the reasons that Todd and I work so well together, because we're able to kind of be the yin and yang, so to speak. But I've always said, you know, there's a lot of, I don't sit here and like hate on motivation. Everyone motivates in different ways, and some of it works for some people and some of it doesn't work for, you know, it's not all for me. You know, we hear there's these audios that Todd listens to on podcasts and YouTube videos where it's all about, I was kicked to the dirt and now I got to get up, and all the haters and, you know, fuck the haters and all this stuff. And I go, okay, well, I'm glad it works for some people. It doesn't work for me, because to me that screams, so you have to have haters to be successful, and you have to have the worst upbringing in the world to be successful, because I don't have really either one to the degree that these things are saying I should to become successful. So I've even done a morning meeting again, just so that we can appease the masses. And so, again, certain stories, really hit certain people differently. And I did it on purpose because a lot of people have heard Todd's story. And while everyone has their own and everyone has their own struggles, I don't think any is more valuable of a struggle than others. But I literally got up and on purpose, I said, listen, guys, I haven't, and I'm just using examples from Todd's story. I said, guys, I haven't been held by gunpoint. I haven't been damn near homeless. I haven't had this, and this. That being said, I don't, some of the people in this room may not have had those things either, but the question you have to ask yourself is, do you feel like you had to have those things to become successful? Or do you feel like, man, I can't be successful because I haven't had that tough of an upbringing? You have to find your own difficulties and decide what's going to work best to motivate yourself. So it's pretty crazy that you mentioned that, because I know it's insane that one, it was the two sets of ordering those statements to make you figure out that, because that's a pretty specific item within my personality that a lot of people don't even really know. So,
well, it's crazy too.
Good job.
Yeah, it's crazy because I remember taking it and I was like, how do you get all of that?
Yeah.
To it's beyond, it's for me, it's unfathomable. I sit there and I look at it. I'm just like, man, there's no way he got all this out of just me putting stuff in order, so it's powerful, man. I'm glad that there was a connection there. I could have, when you were saying, I started smiling because it's literally who Brandon is. You're like, I'm here live. And if I'm wrong, and I'm like, you're fucking not like that's who he is. But that's cool, man. Tell us,
that's crazy.
It's crazy. You get all that out of that, Paul.
So patterns can tell you a lot. Me and any of our coaches that we coach or train or mentor to be really good coaches, to not need to play this ego-driven marketing game that's going on out there. Not that you shouldn't play a marketing game and play it well, but the ego-driven leads to hundreds of thousands of dollars to try and look like more than you are and very little impact. Funnels that are way more effective than the coaches they lead to is something that I'm not willing to stand by and accept anymore. But as you get into that and as you understand this space, we've got patterns, but we want to use them as exploration. I can see the patterns in Brandon's assessment, but that doesn't allow me to diagnose him. In fact, I don't want to. I just want to say, in my experience, these thinking patterns generally show up like this. And then listen, I learned way more listening to you describe what's in there and even bring in some of the other measurements that I can see, because the habit finder doesn't tell me anything about you, Brandon. Right. It just tells me how you think, which is not you. Now that's a catch-22 of sorts, because how you think impacts every facet of your life. The decisions you make, the feelings that you process, the actions that you take, the results you create are ultimately pivoted on how you think. But at any time, you can override that thinking. We are not our thoughts is so important. And when someone goes into the habit finder assessment, if they're looking for identity, which is what people love about personality tests, is it gives them labels and easy ways to remember their identity, which is the scariest part about it. Then we miss the opportunity to grow, because as soon as how you act and as soon as how you think and as soon as how you feel becomes your identity, that's like putting the clay in the kiln. You just made it rock hard. And unfortunately, sometimes we have people come to us and we need to shatter the structure and go get some new clay, go kind of rebuild from the ground up so that it stays malleable so that we can grow. But that's all I come in and do is not give expertise, but what I teach any great leader is the same philosophy I use for coaching. It's not what you know that makes you a great leader or a great coach. It's what you notice that makes you a great leader or a great coach. And granted, I feel like I get to cheat because like the habit finder is like our contra cheat code, it's like up, down, A, B. Like it's crazy to get to come into a conversation with CEOs of major companies and hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs and be able to get right to the heart of what we should be talking about to create change, create shift. in people's lives. And again, I'm not anti-tactics. I'm not anti-strategies. I'm not anti-hustle. But you got to understand what you're playing with. Because if you don't, you might as well be handing a loaded gun to a 6-year-old, because all of those things are powerful and therefore are dangerous if not understood. Like hustle. It's a badge of honor out there. You got to hustle. Well, did you know that hustle means to push roughly? That doesn't sound like an exciting life to me. It doesn't sound like the great kingdoms of old that had to fight to create their kingdom. Guess what they had to do the rest of their life? They had to fight to keep it. And they never got to. History has taught us that anyone who took and created a kingdom by force didn't get to keep it. Anyone who created a kingdom by influence and by growth and transformation and understanding and compassion and patience and curiosity and all these sissy words, like they're the ones who got to keep what they created and actually got to enjoy creating it and having it. So those kinds of things, that's the conversation we want to be having, not because hustle isn't required. Absolutely. Hustle's like an antibiotic. When your body gets too out of whack that it needs something that's actually bad for it to make it better, yeah, then hustle is really appropriate. But if you're taking antibiotics like a multivitamin every day, that's losing sight of the longer term vision we were talking about. That's relying heavily on the tactics and the strategies. Again, listen to the words, please, relying heavily on them, not that you should eradicate them, that you shouldn't have short-term tactics and strategies, that you shouldn't take antibiotics, figuratively speaking. I'm not here to make some pharmaceutical argument or holistic healthcare perspective, but like understand what you're playing with, understand what you're doing. Brandon, you said motivation. Well, the reason why motivation doesn't motivate you is because motivation is an impelling force. It's something that comes from the outside that pushes upon us. And when it stops pushing, we stop moving. Just like a jet ski or a boat that has an impeller that pushes it forward. When that impeller stops, it slows to a halt. And that's what we experience. And you've got measurements that are rare for this industry. In my joy, which is the second most sabotaged and challenged area in the entrepreneur's life, and yours is crystal clear, which means you don't respond well to an impelling force because you know intuitively, whether you realize it or not, that what drives you comes from within. It comes from careful consideration, from breathing life into yourself and serving others rather than looking for an external manipulation to push you. That's very uncomfortable for someone who's got the thinking patterns that you have.
You know, it's funny you say that because, it's Brandon, he's very good at being the devil's advocate, right? Like I'm the guy like, dude, let's go. I'm going to run through the wall as fast as I can, as you know, right? And if there's another wall, I'm going to run through that one too. And Brandon like yanks on the back of my shirt. He's like, whoa, slow the fuck down. He's like, let's look at everything, right? So, forget titles aside, but he is very analytical and all that other stuff. But Brandon's also I'm going to give you some compliments here. So if those listening, it's only happens once every 10 episodes. But he's amazing at so many things, but he's very calculated on how he moves to where a guy like me, again, different stories, different upbringings. I'm like, you know what? I can fucking do anything. That's not ego. That's confidence in me. I know what I'm capable of. If I and everybody says, put your mind to it. Well, in your case, you literally mean, put your mind to it, right? Put your brain to it. Get your patterns in alignment to how you want to move, right? So I have, as I'm getting more tenured in life, get to that point where I'm saying to myself, man, I need a guy like Brandon. So we talk about Habit Finder, and I've mentioned to many people on several different podcasts. I've talked about you and Habit Finder and just what a great human you are, but more importantly, how Habit Finder can help shape people in positions they should be in. I know by taking your test, and I was telling Brandon this the other day, that there are certain things that Brandon does way better than me. And because of how he thinks and the way he sees things, his vision, if you will, I just step aside. I always give my opinion because we're very conscious of each other's opinion, how we move. That being said, if Brandon said, hey, this is the best way to go in this scenario, And he's usually right, so, and it's from a slow thought process where I've had to really, really get better at saying to myself, Todd, slow down before you make a decision. Not every opportunity is a good one. And really when it came to me, what I was like, man, this is going to help companies. And I know, this, Paul, from obviously 7 years of hard work, but many more years than that, but with the company is companies now place people in positions to help them stay in their lane of what they're good at, because they're not as good as Brandon in this situation. They're not as good as Todd. So let's put Todd here. So Brandon here, and let's build from that. Is that pretty fair to say in companies nowadays?
Absolutely. The ones that are thriving are the ones who find complementary players and appreciate that. Appreciate the yin and the yang, as you said, Brandon, which is super important. Not because the idea is that we should all agree, but we should all agree on why we disagree. That's a major issue in the world right now is I don't agree with you because you're an idiot or you're a fascist or you're a socialist or whatever. I'm never going to agree on that's the reason we disagree. Yeah. I could agree on principles. I could disagree with you on principles, and we could agree that we disagree on principles. But one of the reasons this dynamic works so well is because you don't allow identity to get caught up in the conversation. You're talking about issues and opinions and perspectives while keeping the identity of your priceless intrinsic selves intact. And that's a beautiful combination to have. It's very hard to create, but it's kind of like having a good marriage. I work with a lot of couples, and the first thing I'll say to all of them is I'm not going to teach you to not fight. In fact, if you're not fighting, I'm going to be more worried. I'm going to teach you to fight fair. And that's what I hear you describing with you and Brandon is you guys fight, but you fight fair.
Yeah.
That creates an incredible perspective. That creates challenge and calibration and new perspective and all the things, because you can find tremendous compliments in even someone that you think is just like you. You can find different things because you're going to notice things that they're doing that will annoy you, but it's because your subconscious is very aware that you do something similar and you're really annoyed that you do it, but seeing it in somebody else exaggerates it.
Like me and Jason Cisneros. It's funny because I do want to talk about this for a minute because, when you talk about opportunity for instance, right? So I've been very fortunate to do some pretty cool things, right? I remember I always tell the story about the first time I spoke in LA in front of everybody that, was pitched to me that I'll be on this beautifully huge stage and the lights, they're just so great and everything's going to be shining down. And I was speaking at a VIP dinner on a 10 by 10 box stage and glad that I made an impact when I was there because I was pretty raw, as you very well know, on stage. But, from that spawned opportunity and people got to know a little bit about who I am. And as I kind of grew in the world, it was pretty amazing to kind of connect with people like you and Jason and other people. Since then, opportunity has come at a very high level, right? We're talking 7-figure opportunities where people have come in and asked us to be a part of their organization and kind of, scaled tremendously. I got to tell you that we've had in the past 3 weeks meeting with a billionaire, another company is doing well over $100 million of scaling with Zero Debt that wants us to kind of help them in specific ways. And not one time. Now they may know who Todd Special is. They don't know who Brandon is because he hasn't marketed himself yet. He hasn't spoken on stage. He hasn't been there, but there's not one time I would not bring Brandon. So this here, it's not a Todd Special. It's a Brandon Biskin Todd Special package deal because I am completely aware that I need someone like Brandon by my side to elevate who I am and what our company can become. How important is that kind of understanding for people to grow and grow quickly?
It's critical. It's absolutely critical to have people around you that disagree with you, that have different perspective than you, because then you learn to build your relationship on humanity, and then you can recreationally experiment with your opinions. That's the whole key. You don't look at Brandon because of what he believes spiritually or politically or whatever. You see Brandon and Brandon sees Todd. And that allows you to have these incredible conversations about everything else, even heated ones, knowing that as soon as it's over, we go back to like we're still human beings. We're still connected in basic trust and commitment and all the things that matter. That's so important in a company, in leadership, in marriage, and whatever. So important to be able to find that level. And that doesn't come from personality. That doesn't come from emotional preference. That doesn't come from having the same interests and hobbies. That comes from realizing you get down far enough, like we're all very human, and we have an opportunity to connect with someone on that level that can challenge us and support us and be demanding with us and everything else. I mean, that's the holy grail of personal growth and professional growth is having that dynamic.
It's funny because the other day I run fast, as you know, Paul, and I'm very, I'm very direct in where I want to go. And someone asked me to, I don't understand. One of my biggest flaws I feel is I don't understand why people don't get stuff done like this. I don't get it. Like, if you come to me and you say, hey, Todd, I need this done, I'm dropping everything. I'm doing it. I'm going to get it done. And that's it. Right. May not be so organizational by any means, but if Paul said, hey, Todd, I need this written out today, you think you can get it done soon for me? I'm like, Paul, I'll have it over to you in 15 minutes. Noelle Agape, she's got her, health stuff going on, right? She's amazing. And a lot of a lot of really cool stuff. And she's helping me with dieting and trimming down, talking about parasites in my body and stuff. Like, she's a genius when it comes to that. And she said, I need you to write me, I need to know your height and your target, or your weight and your target goal, your height, your what you eat. And this, I said, well, it's simple. I eat chicken and turkey. She goes, nothing else. I'm like, not really. Like, I don't like a lot of other things. She goes, get it done for me by the end of the week. Well, I got it done in about 11 minutes because it's the first thing that's important to me. So I have short patience when it comes to, if I have to ask you to do something 3, 4, 5 times, I have very short patience. So we talk about real in a relationship with Brandon and I. It's funny because the other day we get a text message from a guy who's doing some work for us. And it's just excuse after excuse after excuse. And I'm not good at articulating patience through text message.
You're really good at passive aggressive texting. Yeah. You're really, really, really good at that.
So we're in a group text message, Paul, and I get off the group text message. I text Brandon. I go, dude, am I a douche? And the response was, yes. It was instant. And he was we laughed about it. We have a good time because I have that trust in Brandon. I believe, and he's not saying things to call me a douche. He's like, hey, dude, you got to grow in this fast. And he even said, I'm literally talking to my wife and saying, Todd's so good at this, and that. And I said, you know what, Brandon, you need to handle the reins from here on out.
What I said was, I feel exactly the same way as you. Let's just be more strategic about our words so we get what we want.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I said.
When I'm like, you know what, Paul, I asked you to do this, fucking do it, right? Like, I'm paying you to do it, fucking get it done. That's me. It's a growth thing that I have to deal with. So you're absolutely right, because when you have that dynamic in business and relationship, it doesn't matter personally, it's a pretty cool thing to be able to go, it's okay to disagree because I trust in who he is and his opinion, business and personal life, right? So he's going to give me good advice. That's a pretty cool dynamic.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. It's a really cool complement to each other in terms of your drive. Interestingly enough, I mean, as much as you've cultivated a life completely driven by obligation and fear and pain, and most people that debilitates, most people that burns out. So that's a testament to your stamina and to your work ethic. But to have harnessed that, awesome. I think you should be grateful for that drive because it got you here. As we talked, almost a year ago, don't be shocked when that stops being what's going to get you to the next level. That's where it's going to get hard. And that's, I think, where Brandon can help complement that. At the same time, Brandon's got some thought processes that would lead me to believe that he has a hard time saying no to anybody. And so you being able to see when he says yes, and it doesn't serve the objective, it doesn't take care of you guys. I'm sure that's been a really good complementary balance as well. Because similar to asking at what cost, all I would recommend to you, Brandon, is to not say yes very quickly and consider why you're saying yes, and don't take the first answer. Don't take the initial because it would help or because it's important or because of karma or whatever else, because there's some interesting dynamics going on under the surface in self that would create some really interesting conversation you may not even be aware of why you should say yes when someone needs you from a self-sacrificing standpoint. Because there should be a balance there. Like being selfish is like gut bacteria, which you're learning a lot from Noel about. Too much, bad. Too little, bad. So we want to consider that balance as well. Just interesting observations between the two of you and
that's
your
really
brain processes.
So I am curious because we keep talking about dynamics with multiple people in the conversation and kind of how they can play off one another, just based off the massive amount of experience you have working with, small and large teams when it comes to the Habit Finder findings. Have, just out of sheer curiosity, has there been like this sweet spot mixture of people that you've seen that has generated, more success from whatever their standards of success are? Like, is there, if you have a group of 3, if you have these certain types of people, we've found that to be this quote unquote perfect mixture. Have you seen any kind of, patterns from that perspective?
I mean, you can certainly find some if you're looking for them, but they're going to be corollary. They're not going to be causation. Like you can't say it's because of those 3 that this is going to work or this is going to happen. A lot of it comes down to the basic principles of what makes those things work. Number one, and they've done extensive, far beyond our company could ever accomplish, extensive research on what allows people to win in groups. And the number one finding is that they're safe. From kindergartners to lawyers, doctors, CEOs, the number one attribute of successful teams or groups is they're safe. And that comes back to what I was just talking about with you and Todd, is you're human beings first, which is what you are able to then tether to, like being out on a space station in zero gravity. You're able to tether to that to go experiment and play around in this area of life that if you don't have a tether, it takes one little bump and you're gone forever. And so being able to understand that, being safe, and that's not, oh, let me protect you safe. What they're talking about is I don't need to show up as anyone else but myself. And therefore I don't feel like I need to pretend. I don't feel like I need to have excessive shame or guilt or fear. And therefore I'm in a healthier position to hear your perspective of how I am. So that's the safety. Unfortunately, there's a lot of impatience. There's a lot of challenges to being able to trust that. But because the second one is responsible, you got to be safe and then you got to be responsible, which brings accountability into play, being supportively demanding, having standards for the group is super important. But number one, and by a long shot, is that it's a safe place. Like I actually want to hear what's going on. Like to believe that we can just say, get this done. The most irrational thing we're doing. And Todd, you just gave a masterclass example of doing this, but one of the most irrational things we do is we project our rationality onto other people. When someone asks me to do something, I get it done. So that's what I'm naturally going to expect from everyone else, which is so irrational and so exhausting and causes us to aim at all these other things. I love your example. Like if there's a wall, I'm going to run through it. And Brandon's like, hey, Todd, there's a door over here.
That's exactly what it is, dude. Well, listen, Paul, we've taken up your time, man. I know you got to get going. I cannot thank you enough for being on. Guys, do me a favor. Go to habitfinder.com. Just like it sounds, habitfinder.com. Take this test. I'm telling you, it will change your life. It's changed mine. I literally live a lot by the conversation that we had a year ago. Paul, you're an extraordinary human. Your team is extraordinary. Everything you guys do is just something that we will support forever. Also, go follow Paul at official Paul Blanchard on IG and his Facebook page. Just search for Paul Blanchard. He's awesome. It's BLANCHARD. Paul Blanchard. Dude, thanks again, Paul.
Thank
Sincerely,
you so much,
man.
Paul.
We cannot appreciate you enough, dude.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Brother.
Enjoy yourself, brother. See you.
All right, take care.
All right, bye-bye. If you love this guest as much as we did, please follow them on all their social media platforms. The way to support us is to like and comment on all your favorite episodes. And please don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notification for the next Gut Check Uncut.